"You're an embarrassment, Dad. You don't belong here." Those words cut deeper than any knife could. But Richard Reynolds didn't know that the daughter who spoke them was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life, one that would cost her $33 million. Every empire has its beginning. For Richard Reynolds, it started with empty pockets and calloused hands. At 19, he worked construction sites during the day and mopped floors at night. While other young men spent their money on cars and parties, Richard saved every penny. By 25, he had enough for a down payment on his first property, a rundown duplex that most people wouldn't look at twice. He fixed it himself, rented it out, and used that income to buy another. One property became two became four, and within a decade, Reynolds Real Estate was born. Money comes and goes, but integrity stays forever, Richard would tell anyone who'd listen. It wasn't just something he said. It was how he lived. He treated his tenants fairly, paid his workers well, and never cut corners, even when it would have made him richer faster. When his wife Sarah gave birth to their daughter Danielle, Richard promised her a life he never had. The best schools, beautiful clothes, summer camps in Europe, nothing was too good for his little girl. But with each gift, each opportunity, something changed in Danielle's eyes. The gratitude slowly faded, replaced by expectation. As Richard's wealth grew into the millions, so did the distance between father and daughter. He noticed it in small ways at first. How she'd roll her eyes when he talked about his humble beginnings, how she'd introduce him to her rich friends with a hint of embarrassment in her voice. Still, Richard held on to hope. "She'll understand someday," he told himself. "When she's older, she'll see what really matters." But Richard Reynolds was wrong. His daughter wouldn't learn to value what he built. Instead, she would destroy her own life with her next decision, a choice that would make her smile disappear forever. Would you have the courage to teach someone you love a lesson they'd never forget? Comment below. Danielle Reynolds never knew hunger, never felt the sting of having the electricity cut off, never understood what it meant to work until your body ached just to keep a roof over your head. By age 16, she had her own credit card with no limit. At 18, a brand new Mercedes for her birthday. When she turned 21, Richard bought her a condo near her college campus. Not that she spent much time studying. "Daddy will fix it" became her life motto, and fix it he did. When she crashed her Mercedes after drinking at a party, Richard's lawyers made the charges disappear. When she failed her college classes, a donation to the university's new library earned her another chance. When her first business venture, a boutique funded entirely by her father, collapsed after 6 months of mismanagement, Richard covered the debts without a single "I told you so." "You're enabling her," Richard's oldest friend Thomas Turner warned him over whiskey one night. "She needs to fall down sometimes, Rich. That's how we learn to get back up." But Richard couldn't bear to see his daughter struggle, not after losing Sarah to cancer when Danielle was just 12, not when Danielle was all he had left. So the pattern continued. Danielle took, Richard gave. She demanded, he provided. She failed, he rescued. By her 30th birthday, Danielle had burned through 3 failed businesses, 2 engagements, and countless friendships. Nothing was ever her fault, not in her mind. There was always someone else to blame, always her father's checkbook to make problems vanish. Then Adrian Cole entered the picture, handsome, charming, and with a keen eye for opportunity. he spotted Danielle across a charity gala, or more accurately, he spotted the diamond necklace worth more than most people's homes around her neck. Their whirlwind romance lasted 6 months before they married in a ceremony that cost more than what most families earn in 5 years. Richard watched from the front row, a smile hiding his concern. Something about Adrian didn't sit right with him. If only he knew how right he was. "It's time." 2 simple words whispered by a father who finally realized his love had become his daughter's weapon against him. Richard Reynolds' 70th birthday should have been a celebration of his remarkable life. 7 decades of hard work, integrity, and success that transformed a poor boy into a real estate tycoon worth $33 million. Instead, it became the night his daughter Danielle showed her true colors in front of everyone who mattered. The invitation arrived in an elegant gold envelope. "Join us to celebrate Richard Reynolds' 70th birthday," it read. The word "us" caught Richard's attention immediately. Not me, but us. Danielle and her husband Adrian. Richard arrived at Danielle's mansion precisely at 7 p.m., dressed in his favorite navy suit. Nothing flashy. Richard never cared for showing off his wealth. He carried a small photo album under his arm, filled with memories he hoped to share with his daughter. The valet took his modest sedan with a hint of judgment, parking it far from the line of luxury cars gleaming under spotlights. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated rooms filled with people Richard barely knew. Executives, celebrities, social climbers. Danielle's crowd, not his. "Dad, you made it." Danielle air-kissed his cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup. Her diamond earrings cost more than Richard's first property. Adrian's showing everyone the new wine cellar. "Go grab yourself a drink." For 2 hours, Richard wandered through his own birthday party, a stranger in a celebration supposedly for him. No one asked about his life. No one cared about his stories. The photo album remained unopened under his arm. When dinner was announced, Richard discovered he wasn't seated at the main table with Danielle and Adrian. Instead, he was placed near the kitchen doors, beside people who kept asking if he was staff. Something broke inside him. After 7 decades of patience, Richard had reached his limit. He approached the main table, champagne glass in hand, and gently tapped it for attention. "I'd like to make a toast," Richard began, his voice steady despite the pain in his heart. "Family is the foundation of everything I've ever worked for. Without it, wealth means nothing." Danielle's face flushed with embarrassment. She stood abruptly, cutting him off. "You're an embarrassment, Dad," she hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You are not welcome here. This is my house, my life, and my family now. You don't belong." The room fell silent. Guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Adrian smirked behind his wine glass. Richard didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply placed his glass down, turned, and walked out. But what no one knew was that Richard Reynolds had already prepared for this moment, and his revenge would be served cold, calculated, and completely legal. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? What would you have done in Richard's shoes? 3 days after the birthday disaster, Richard sat across from Margaret Holt, his attorney of 30 years. The large oak desk between them held a stack of documents that would change everything. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Richard?" Margaret asked, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "Once we finalize these changes, there's no going back." Richard nodded, the lines on his face deeper than they'd been just days before. I've given Danielle everything, Margaret. Money, opportunities, second chances. But I can't give her my self-respect. Margaret had watched Richard build his empire from nothing. She'd also watched Danielle transform from a sweet child into a woman consumed by entitlement. The changes to Richard's will had been in the works for months, but the birthday incident had sealed the decision. "Let's review the conditions one more time," Margaret said, flipping through the papers. The will was both simple and brilliant. While Richard's estate was valued at over $33 million, Danielle's access to it came with one critical requirement. She had to take care of Richard personally in his final years, ensuring his dignity and well-being and showing him the love and respect he had always given her. If she failed to honor those terms, which Richard was certain she would, the fortune would bypass her entirely. Instead, it would be divided among Richard's loyal employees, selected charities, and one person Danielle despised more than anyone, Michael Turner, Richard's godson, and the son of his late best friend, Thomas. "Michael has his father's integrity," Richard explained. "He works hard, treats people with respect, and understands the value of a dollar. Everything Danielle should have learned but refused to." Margaret nodded as she prepared the final documents. "And the video statement?" Richard patted the small camera on the desk. "I'll record it today. I want Danielle to hear the truth from me, even after I'm gone." As Richard signed the last page, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For decades, he'd tried to protect Danielle from consequences. Now, he was ensuring she would finally face them. "There's one more thing," Richard said, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. Inside was evidence of every time Danielle had disrespected him, including photos from the birthday party. "Keep this safe. You'll know when it's time." Little did Danielle know that her father's revenge was already in motion, a ticking time bomb set to explode when she least expected it. What would you include in your will to ensure your legacy isn't abused? Share your thoughts below. "Your father's health is deteriorating rapidly, Mrs. Cole. He should be surrounded by family now." The doctor's words hung in the air as Danielle examined her freshly manicured nails, barely glancing up from her phone. "I'm busy planning our summer vacation. Can't you just hire a nurse or something?" 2 months after the birthday disaster, Richard's body began to betray him, just as his daughter had. The diagnosis came without warning. Aggressive pancreatic cancer already spread too far. 6 months at most, the specialist said, maybe less. Richard took the news with the same quiet dignity he'd shown his entire life. He didn't rage against fate or demand experimental treatments. Instead, he put his remaining affairs in order and moved into a modest but comfortable hospice facility near his favorite park. When the hospice called Danielle to inform her of her father's condition, she sent flowers instead of visiting. When they called again a week later, she had her assistant take the message. By the third call, she had blocked the number entirely. Why waste time visiting him? Adrian asked one evening as they lounged by their infinity pool. He's practically dead already, and soon all that money will be ours. Let's focus on enjoying life. Danielle smiled, raising her champagne glass. "To my inheritance," she toasted. 33 million reasons to celebrate. What Danielle didn't know was that Richard wasn't alone in his final days. Michael Turner visited daily, bringing homemade meals and sitting for hours listening to Richard's stories. Margaret Holt came 3 times a week, finalizing details and ensuring Richard's wishes would be honored. Even Richard's former employees and tenants stopped by, thanking him for his kindness over the years. "Does it hurt?" Michael asked one afternoon. "Knowing Danielle won't come?" Richard gazed out the window at the maple trees beginning to turn golden. "What hurts is knowing I failed her as a father. I gave her everything except what she needed most. Consequences." He patted the envelope on his bedside table. "But that's about to change." As Richard grew weaker, the wheels of his revenge turned stronger. The clock was ticking down to a moment Danielle never saw coming. Have you ever had to let someone you love face the consequences of their actions? Drop a comment below. The reading of Richard Reynolds' will shall now commence. Margaret Holt's voice cut through the hushed whispers of the small gathering in her office. Outside, local reporters waited, cameras ready to capture the moment the Reynolds fortune changed hands. Richard had passed away peacefully 3 weeks earlier. His funeral was small but meaningful, attended by friends, employees, and people whose lives he'd touched. Danielle arrived 20 minutes late, dressed in designer black, her eyes dry behind oversized sunglasses. Adrian stood beside her, already mentally spending their inheritance. Now, seated in the plush leather chair across from Margaret's desk, Danielle couldn't hide her smile. She'd endured the funeral, nodded at all the right moments during the eulogy, and even managed to squeeze out a tear for the photographers. The performance was over. It was time for her reward. "Before we begin," Margaret said, placing a laptop on her desk, "Richard requested that we watch this video first." Danielle sighed dramatically. "Is this really necessary? We all know what the will says. My father and I may have had our differences, but he wouldn't leave his only child with nothing." Margaret's expression remained neutral as she pressed play. Richard's face filled the screen. Though clearly recorded during his final days, his eyes burned with clarity and purpose. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I've passed on. To those who showed me kindness, thank you. To those who honored our friendship, I am grateful. And to my daughter, Danielle." He paused, his gaze seeming to lock directly with Danielle's across time. "I gave you everything a father could give, opportunities, second chances, unconditional love. But I made a terrible mistake. I never taught you that actions have consequences. I never showed you that respect must be earned, not demanded. I failed you as a father by trying to protect you from life's hardest lessons." Danielle's smile began to fade. Adrian shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Therefore," Richard continued, "I have made provisions in my will with specific conditions. My estate, valued at approximately $33 million, shall be distributed as follows." Margaret paused the video and picked up the official document. "To my daughter, Danielle Reynolds Cole," she read, her voice steady. "Though I once dreamed you would carry on my legacy, your actions have proven otherwise. I leave you only the memories of the wealth you squandered in disrespect." The color drained from Danielle's face. "What? This is a joke, right?" Margaret continued reading. "The remainder of my estate shall be transferred in accordance with the following conditions." As the terms were revealed, Danielle's shock turned to rage. The fortune, every penny of it, would bypass her completely. Instead, it would go to Richard's loyal employees, selected charities, and, most shocking of all, to Michael Turner. "This is impossible!" Adrian shouted, jumping to his feet. "We'll contest this. It's elder abuse. He wasn't in his right mind." Margaret calmly placed a folder on the desk. "Richard anticipated your reaction. Inside are signed statements from 3 independent psychiatric evaluations confirming his mental competence, along with documented evidence of Danielle's treatment of him over the past 5 years." She pressed play on the video again. Richard's final words echoed through the stunned silence. "Danielle, this is the result of your choices. You chose pride over love, greed over gratitude, and now your smile will disappear because integrity can't be bought." The inheritance was gone, and Danielle's nightmare was just beginning. Do you think Richard's revenge went too far, or was it the perfect lesson? Tell me what you think in the comments. You chose pride over love, greed over gratitude. Richard Reynolds' face filled the screen, his eyes clear despite his illness. The office fell silent as everyone watched the man deliver justice from beyond the grave. "I've thought about this decision for years," Richard continued, his voice steady. "This isn't a choice I made in anger or spite. It's the last lesson I can teach you, Danielle." Danielle gripped the armrests of her chair, knuckles white, as her father's recorded message played on. The inheritance she counted on, the $33 million she and Adrian had already mentally spent, was slipping through her fingers with each word. "Money without values corrupts. Wealth without work destroys. I earned every dollar through honest labor and fair dealings. I hoped you would honor that legacy." The video showed Richard shifting slightly, leaning closer to the camera. "Instead, you treated people as beneath you. You mocked the very values that built your privilege. You humiliated me at my own birthday celebration." Danielle flinched, as if struck. She hadn't expected her father to mention that night so directly. "Therefore, my estate will be distributed as follows. 20% to my loyal employees who worked alongside me for decades. 30% to charities supporting hard-working families trying to achieve their dreams. And 50% to Michael Turner, who has shown the character and integrity I always hoped to see in you." Adrian jumped to his feet, face red with rage. "This is fraud. He can't do this. We'll sue everyone in this room." Margaret paused the video, her expression calm but firm. "Mr. Cole, please control yourself or I'll have security escort you out." When the room quieted, she resumed the video. Richard's face softened slightly. "Danielle, this didn't have to end this way. All I ever wanted was your respect. Not as a wealthy man, but as your father. The father who read you bedtime stories, who taught you to ride a bike, who held you when your mother died." For the first time, emotion cracked through Richard's composed exterior. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "I love you, Danielle. I always will, but love without accountability isn't love at all. It's surrender, and I won't surrender you to the person you become." The video ended with Richard looking directly into the camera, his final words landing like hammer blows. "Your mother would be disappointed in us both. Me, for failing to raise you right. You, for throwing away what truly matters. I hope someday you'll understand that this was my final act of love." The screen went black. In the silence that followed, Danielle's world collapsed around her. She had gambled her inheritance on her father's unconditional love. She had lost. Would you have the courage to cut off someone you love if they betrayed your values? Share your thoughts below. Michael Turner never expected to become a millionaire at 32. The son of Richard's oldest friend, Thomas, Michael had grown up hearing stories about Uncle Rich and his remarkable journey from poverty to prosperity. Unlike Danielle, Michael listened. He learned. He understood the value of hard work because he lived it every day. After college, Michael had refused Richard's offer of a high-paying position in the Reynolds Company. "I need to earn my own way," he'd explained. Instead, he took a job as a teacher in a struggling public school, living in a small apartment and driving a 10-year-old car. When Richard became ill, Michael visited almost daily. Not for money, he had no idea what was in the will, but out of genuine affection for the man who had been a second father to him. "I don't understand," Michael said, now staring at Margaret in disbelief as she explained his inheritance. "Why would he leave me so much?" "Because you're everything he wanted in a child," Margaret answered simply. "He saw in you the values he tried to instill in Danielle." Across the room, Danielle's hatred burned through her shock. "You planned this!" she hissed at Michael. "You manipulated my father when he was dying. You turned him against me." Michael shook his head, still processing the news that he was now worth over $16 million. "I never asked for this, Danielle. I didn't even know." "Liar!" Adrian shouted, pointing an accusing finger. "You wormed your way into his good graces. This was your plan all along." Margaret intervened, her voice sharp. "Mr. Cole, the only manipulation here came from you and your wife. Richard documented everything. Your behavior, your comments about waiting for him to die, your plans for his money. He was fully aware of who truly cared for him." Michael stood, uncomfortable with the tension. "I need time to think about this. I never wanted to come between Richard and his daughter." As he moved toward the door, Danielle blocked his path, her designer heels bringing her eye level with him. "This isn't over," she whispered. "That money belongs to me. I'll make sure you never enjoy a penny of it." Michael met her gaze steadily. "It was never about the money, Danielle. That's what you never understood about your father." The battle lines were drawn, but the war had only just begun. If you suddenly inherited millions, would you spend it on yourself or use it to help others? Let me know in the comments. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cole, but your father's will is legally airtight." The words hit Danielle like a physical blow as she sat across from the fifth attorney she'd consulted in 2 weeks. Each one had delivered the same verdict. Richard Reynolds had outmaneuvered her completely. "There must be something we can do," Adrian insisted, leaning forward aggressively. $33 million doesn't just disappear because an old man got his feelings hurt. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman with 20 years of experience challenging wills, closed the folder in front of her. Mr. Reynolds consulted with 3 separate estate planning experts. He underwent multiple psychological evaluations to prove he was of sound mind. He documented your wife's behavior with dates, witnesses, and, in some cases, recordings. "Recordings?" Danielle's voice cracked. "Yes, including one from your father's birthday party where you told him, and I quote, 'You're an embarrassment, Dad. You don't belong here.'" Danielle's face burned with humiliation. She remembered those words, spoken in a moment of frustration and entitlement. She never imagined they would cost her millions. "What about claiming undue influence?" Adrian demanded. "That Michael guy was always hanging around. He must have manipulated Richard." The attorney shook her head. "We investigated that angle. Mr. Turner has an airtight alibi for every meeting with your father. Nurses were present. Visits were logged. More importantly, your father began changing his will months before his illness, long before Mr. Turner became a regular visitor. For 6 weeks, Danielle and Adrian fought desperately through the courts. They filed motions, demanded hearings, and even attempted to freeze the estate's assets. Nothing worked. Meanwhile, the media feasted on the story. Entitled "Heiress Disinherited," screamed the headlines. Video clips from society events showed Danielle mocking her father's humble beginnings. Former employees came forward with stories of her cruelty and disrespect. The final blow came when the judge not only dismissed their case, but ordered them to pay all legal fees, including those of Michael Turner and the charities named in the will. "Your father was a brilliant businessman to the end," their last attorney told Danielle as she signed the final paperwork. "He knew exactly what you would do, and he prepared for it perfectly." As Danielle walked out of the courthouse, cameras flashing in her face, she realized a terrible truth. She had underestimated her father her entire life, and that mistake had cost her everything. Have you ever misjudged someone who turned out to be smarter than you thought? Tell me about it in the comments. Mrs. Cole, this letter was to be delivered to you exactly 3 months after your father's passing. The courier handed Danielle a cream-colored envelope sealed with the Reynolds family crest. It had been nearly 100 days since she'd lost the legal battle, and her world had already begun to crumble. Credit cards declined, membership fees unpaid, the first whispers about selling the mansion to cover mounting debts. Alone in her study, Adrian was out networking again. Danielle broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was a single page in her father's handwriting and a small key. "My dearest Danielle," it began, surprising her with its tenderness. "If you're reading this, then my final lesson has begun. You've discovered that actions have consequences, perhaps for the first time in your life." Danielle almost crumpled the letter, but something made her continue reading. "I never wanted to leave you with nothing. Despite everything, you are my daughter, and I love you. Therefore, I've established a separate trust in your name containing $1 million. Her heart leaped. 1 million wasn't 33, but it was something, a lifeline in her drowning financial situation. Then she read the next line. "This money can only be accessed under one condition. You must divorce Adrian Cole within 30 days of receiving this letter." The paper shook in her hands. Her father's words continued, each one more devastating than the last. "I watched Adrian from the moment he entered your life. I saw what you couldn't or wouldn't see. He married you for your expected inheritance, not for love. The enclosed key opens a safe deposit box at First National Bank containing evidence of his infidelity, his secret bank accounts, and recordings of him discussing his plans for your money with his friends." Danielle felt sick. Memories flashed through her mind. Adrian's unexplained absences, his sudden interest in her father's health, his rage when the inheritance vanished. "The choice is yours, Danielle. Divorce Adrian, claim the $1 million, and perhaps begin to rebuild your life with a valuable lesson learned. Or remain with him and receive nothing, watching as he eventually leaves you when you can no longer fund his lifestyle." The letter ended with a final twist of the knife. The trust has a second condition. If you choose to divorce Adrian and claim the money, You cannot touch the principal for 5 years, only the interest. You'll need to work, budget, and live within modest means for the first time in your life. Consider it the education I failed to give you earlier." Danielle stared at the key in her palm. Her father had given her an impossible choice, her husband or her financial survival. But was it really a choice at all? Or had Richard Reynolds simply revealed a truth she'd been blind to all along? The clock was ticking, 30 days to decide. Would you choose a toxic relationship with financial struggle or freedom with a chance to start over? What would you do in Danielle's position? Let me know below. Where the hell is dinner? And why are there bill collectors calling again? Adrian's voice echoed through the mansion as he slammed the front door. The sound of expensive whiskey bottles clinking in a shopping bag followed him into the kitchen, where Danielle sat, staring at her father's letter for the 100th time. 3 days had passed since she'd received Richard's final message. 3 days of secretly watching Adrian, searching for signs that her father was right. She didn't have to look hard. "We need to talk," Danielle said quietly, sliding the bank key across the marble countertop. Adrian barely glanced at it as he poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey. "About what? More bad news from the lawyers? I told you to stop wasting money on them. It's about us, about our marriage." That got his attention. Adrian's charming smile, the same one that had swept her off her feet 3 years ago, appeared instantly. "Baby, I know things are tough right now, but we're in this together, remember? For richer or poorer." The words rang hollow. Danielle thought about the safe deposit box waiting at the bank. Did she really need to see what was inside? The evidence was standing right in front of her. "I went to the country club today," she said carefully. "They said our membership was revoked because you told them to bill everything to an account that doesn't exist." Adrian's smile faltered. "A misunderstanding. I'll fix it tomorrow." "And the Ferrari? The one you said was being serviced? The dealership called. They're repossessing it because the last 6 payments bounced." The mask slipped further. Adrian's eyes hardened as he drained his glass. "What's with the interrogation? This is your fault anyway. If you hadn't pissed off your father, we'd be set for life." There it was. The truth Danielle had been blind to for years. Adrian hadn't married her. He'd married her expected inheritance. "Get out," she whispered. Adrian laughed, ugly and sharp. "Get out. This is my house too, sweetheart. My name's on the deed." "A deed that's worthless since we haven't paid the mortgage in 2 months, Danielle countered, finding strength in her voice. "The bank called today. We're facing foreclosure." The glass in Adrian's hand crashed against the wall, shattering into 1,000 pieces, just like Danielle's illusions about her marriage. "You stupid, worthless bitch!" he shouted, his handsome face twisted with rage. "You had one job, inherit your father's money, and you couldn't even do that right." As Adrian's true nature erupted before her eyes, Danielle realized her father had given her one final gift: the truth. Have you ever seen someone's true colors come out when money was involved? Share your experience below. I'm done with this disaster. Call me when you figure out how to get your inheritance back. Those were Adrian's last words before he packed 3 suitcases with his designer clothes and walked out the door. He took her jewelry, collateral, he called it, and the last $4,000 from their joint account. Danielle stood in the empty driveway, watching his taxi disappear down the street. She should have felt devastated. Instead, a strange calm washed over her. The decision about her father's offer had been made for her. The next morning, Danielle went to First National Bank. The safe deposit box contained exactly what Richard had promised. Photos of Adrian with 3 different women during their marriage, bank statements showing accounts in the Cayman Islands, and a USB drive with recordings. "I just need to stick it out until the old man kicks it," Adrian's voice played through her earbuds. "Once she gets the money, I'll be set for life, and if she becomes a problem, well, prenups can be challenged." Danielle filed for divorce that afternoon. Within weeks, her carefully constructed world collapsed completely. The mansion went into foreclosure. Luxury cars were repossessed. Designer clothes and handbags sold online for a fraction of their value just to keep the lights on. Former friends vanished overnight. The same social circle that had once competed for invitations to her parties now pretended not to see her at coffee shops. Charity boards quietly asked her to step down. Country clubs lost her membership applications. "Mrs. Cole," the barista at her favorite cafe called out one morning, "your card was declined." Danielle fumbled through her wallet, finding nothing but maxed-out credit cards and an empty change purse. The line of customers behind her shifted impatiently. "I'll get it," said a voice behind her. Michael Turner stepped forward, handing the barista a $20 bill. "And whatever I usually have, thanks." Danielle's face burned with humiliation. "I don't need your charity." Michael's expression held no mockery, only a quiet understanding. "It's coffee, Danielle, not charity." As she clutched the cup, the first thing she hadn't paid for with credit in months, Danielle realized how far she had fallen, and she was still falling. Have you ever hit rock bottom and had to accept help from someone unexpected? How did it change you? Comment below. Reynolds Foundation awards $5 million to Low-Income Housing Initiative. The headline stared back at Danielle from her phone screen as she waited for the bus in the rain. 6 months had passed since Adrian walked out, and her life had transformed in ways she never imagined possible. While Danielle struggled to pay rent on her tiny apartment, Michael Turner was making headlines with her father's money, not by buying mansions or yachts, but by changing lives. The Reynolds Foundation, named in her father's honor, had launched with a clear mission to help hard-working people achieve their dreams through education, housing, and small business support. All the things Richard had believed in. "He's doing what Dad would have wanted," Danielle whispered to herself, a realization that brought both pain and a strange sense of peace. Michael had wasted no time putting the inheritance to work. The first project renovated an abandoned building into affordable apartments for single parents. Next came scholarships for first-generation college students. Then a small business incubator in the neighborhood where Richard had bought his first property. At each ribbon-cutting ceremony, Michael spoke about Richard's legacy. "This isn't my money," he told reporters. "I'm just a caretaker of Richard Reynolds' vision, a world where hard work and integrity are rewarded." The community embraced him as the heir to not just Richard's fortune, but his values. Local news featured stories of families whose lives changed because of the foundation's work. Business leaders praised the economic impact. Politicians sought photo opportunities with the man carrying forward Richard's legacy. From the sidelines, Danielle watched it all unfold. The money that should have funded her luxury lifestyle was instead building something meaningful, something that would outlast fancy cars and designer clothes. One rainy Tuesday, curiosity pulled her to a foundation event. Hidden in the back of the crowd, Danielle listened as a young woman spoke through tears. "Because of the Reynolds Scholarship, I'll be the first in my family to graduate college. Mr. Reynolds believed in me when nobody else did." The audience applauded, but Danielle couldn't join in. Her hands were shaking too badly as a thought struck her like lightning. This was what wealth was supposed to do. Have you ever witnessed someone use their resources to make a real difference? How did it change your perspective on wealth? Share below. Will that be paper or plastic? Danielle smiled at the elderly customer as she bagged groceries, her name tag slightly crooked on her blue uniform vest. After 3 months at Save Mart, she'd been promoted from night stalker to cashier, a small victory that would have seemed laughable in her previous life. The divorce had finalized quickly. Adrian didn't contest it once he realized there was no money to fight over. The $1 million trust from her father remained untouched in the bank, growing interest she couldn't access for another 4 years, just as Richard had planned. "You're working hard today, Danielle," her manager commented as she finished her shift. "Keep it up, and you might make shift supervisor by summer." She nodded, genuinely pleased by the compliment. 6 months ago, she would have scoffed at anyone suggesting she'd find satisfaction in a 14-per-hour job. Now, each paycheck represented something she'd never experienced before. Money she had actually earned. Her apartment was tiny, a studio above a laundromat that rumbled beneath her feet until midnight. Her clothes came from thrift stores. Her meals were carefully budgeted. For the first time in her life, Danielle understood the value of $1 because she had to work for every single one. One evening, sorting through a box of items she'd salvaged from the mansion, Danielle found an old leather journal. Her father's handwriting filled the pages, entries dating back to before she was born. "Worked double shifts again today." One entry from 1985 read, "Hands are blistered, but put another $100 toward the down payment. Only $4,300 more to go." Page after page documented Richard's journey, the struggles, the setbacks, the small victories, the principles that guided him. "Turned down Johnson's offer today," a later entry stated. "Could have made an easy 50 kells by looking the other way on the inspection issues, but that's not who I am. Sarah says she's proud of me. That's worth more than money." Tears streamed down Danielle's face as she read through the night. This was the father she had dismissed as old-fashioned and out of touch. This was the man whose wisdom she had ignored, whose values she had mocked. In the final pages, entries about her broke her heart. Danielle brought home another failing grade, offered to hire a tutor, but she says school is boring. I wonder if I'm making things too easy for her. Paid off Danielle's credit card again today, $12,000 this time. When will she learn? I fear I've failed my daughter by giving her everything except what she truly needs, the chance to earn her own way. As dawn broke, Danielle closed the journal with trembling hands. Her father had been right all along. Have you ever discovered wisdom in someone's words only after it was too late? What would you say to them if you had another chance? Comment below. I'm not here for money. I'm here to apologize. 2 years after Richard Reynolds' death, Danielle stood outside the Reynolds Foundation office, her heart pounding as she waited for Michael to respond. She looked different now. No designer clothes, No expensive jewelry, just a simple dress, and the quiet confidence that comes from standing on your own 2 feet. Michael studied her face, searching for the entitlement he'd seen there at the will reading. Instead, he found something new: humility. "You could have called first," he said, neither inviting her in nor turning her away. Danielle nodded. "I wasn't sure you'd take my call. I wouldn't blame you." For months, she had debated this moment. After finding her father's journal, something had shifted inside her. The anger faded. The blame game ended. What remained was a painful clarity about who she had been and what she had thrown away. "I read his journals," she said simply. "I finally understood who my father really was and who I was too." Michael's expression softened slightly. He stepped aside, allowing her into the office where her father's portrait hung on the wall. Richard's eyes seemed to follow her as she entered, not judging, but watching, waiting. "I'm not asking for anything from the foundation," Danielle continued. "I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that my father was right about everything, about me." She placed a small box on the desk between them. Inside was her mother's wedding ring, the only valuable she hadn't sold. "Dad gave this to me on my 16th birthday. I want to donate it to the foundation. It's not much compared to what you're working with, but it's all I have that matters." Michael opened the box, recognition flashing in his eyes. "Richard showed me a picture of your mother wearing this. He said it was worth more than any building he owned." "Then it should help people, like he would have wanted," Danielle replied. "Like I should have wanted." The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken history. Finally, Michael asked the question that hung in the air. "What do you want, Danielle? Really?" She took a deep breath. A chance to be part of his legacy, not as an heir or a boss, just as someone who wants to help. "I work at Save Mart now, but I have weekends free. The foundation does volunteer work, right? I could start there." Michael's expression was unreadable. "Your father believed people could change. I'm not sure I share his optimism." Danielle nodded, accepting his skepticism as her due. "I don't blame you, but he also believed that integrity can't be bought. It has to be earned. I'm ready to earn it, one day at a time." As Michael considered her offer, Richard's voice seemed to echo through the room. "Money comes and goes, but integrity stays forever." The choice was made. The lesson was learned. The real inheritance, the one that mattered, was finally claimed. Have you ever had to swallow your pride and ask for a second chance? Was it given to you? Share your story of redemption in the comments below.